Good afternoon, and welcome back to another edition of the Lynn Lowdown. I'm Danny Vittori, and today we have on Tristan Foley, the Mass Development TDI Fellow for Union Street in Lynn. Tristan, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Danny. I appreciate it.
Of course. So I guess I'll start by asking a little bit about what a TDI Fellow is. What does that stand for?
Sure. So, to answer your question directly, TDI stands for the Transformative Development Initiative. And I'll back up a little bit and just say Mass Development is a quasi-state agency, meaning they get some funding from the state and some funding from private sources. So I'm a Mass Development employee, and what the Transformative Development Initiative does is it seeks to take all of the resources that are out there and available to gateway cities and focus them on certain districts in the Commonwealth that Mass Development thinks have a lot of potential for equitable economic growth. So I'm based here on Union Street in Lynn for the next 3 years to try to help develop this area in the way that the community wants it developed, and to try to help encourage equitable economic development.
And how many of there are you then?
Oh yeah, so
out right now.
Right, across the state there are 12 different TDI fellows, and they are all the way from Hyannis to Chicopee to Fall River to Lawrence to Lynn, and each community has some things in common as, a gateway city, but each community is also different. So Mass Development tries to design the TDI program to address the specific needs of each individual community.
And you, before, the way that you were kind of describing it to me, which I thought was a really interesting way to describe it because, I'm not super trained in it, so I don't fully understand it, but you were saying as you almost want to create this sort of, I guess, self-sufficient system by the time you leave at the end of 3 years. You do all this work within the community, but it can still work even after you leave.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. And the mechanism by which I'm trying to work here on Union Street in Lynn is through the TDI partnership in Lynn, which is a group of 15 or 16 people from Lynn that Mass Development has gathered to guide my work and to work together. And that includes people from the planning department, EDIC, and other people in Lynn government, as well as people from the Latino Support Network, Main Streets, and local business owners and other area people with different views on the community. So the idea is that I work together with this partnership, and that ideally, after my 3 years here, the partnership is working well enough on its own that it can continue this work after I'm gone.
Which you said makes sense to me. And how long have you been working here? When did the fellowship start?
So I just started at the beginning of September, and my first day in Lynn was the day after Labor Day in September. So I've been here for a little bit over 2 months. Just meeting with as many of the key people in Lynn as I can, and getting to know the community so I can best know how to support everybody.
Yeah, and how would you say, what's your experience been like so far?
I really like this city, and there is a lot going on here. I can't quite put my finger on why, but somehow this city of 100,000 people, to me as an outsider, having come in recently, it has some kind of a small town feel. Despite being a big, major Massachusetts city, it seems like everybody knows each other, or at least is 2 or 3 degrees of separation apart from each other. And also, it just feels like there's a lot of momentum in the city. There's a lot of interesting things happening. There's a lot of different people working on different things. And so I think that emphasizes that my role is just to kind of work to connect these different people and help utilize resources, not really to start anything new, because I think there's already a lot going on here in Lynn.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a ton going on. I've been learning that too in my first few months on the job. And another thing you mentioned too was, like you said, connecting people with existing resources. So you said sometimes people might have these ideas, there might be these funds, but they can't necessarily find each other. So that's part of your role.
Exactly. And I mean, I think you probably know this, you know, you as a journalist and LCTV generally, I think we live in this era of a fire hose of information. And really the tough part these days is kind of cutting down the superfluous stuff and accessing things that are relevant and important. And you know, the same thing exists in the world I'm working in with mass development, which is, you know, for example, there may be a nonprofit that's doing great work on Union Street in Lynn, but the person that founded that nonprofit is already working 80 hours a week. They're already doing this, that, and the other thing. So they might not know about relevant resources. And so my goal here is to learn about everything that's out there, connect people who might not have the time to connect to each other were I not present, and just, you know, kind of hopefully get people moving in the same direction as much as possible.
Yeah, and you just had an event for it too, so it's an extremely collaborative process, it seems like.
Right, yeah, thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, the idea is that Mass Development really wants this TDI program to work effectively across different communities. So the needs of Lynn are necessarily going to be far different from the needs of Hyannis. You know, I don't need to explain to you the differences between those communities. And what Mass Development wants is to be able to put a TDI fellow on the ground in Hyannis and have them be effective, and also put me here on the ground in Lynn and help me be effective. And the only way to do that is to have the focus of my work be learning from people in the community what resources and projects would really help Lynn achieve Lynn's goals and the residents and business owners achieve their goals specifically, not some broader based idea of what development might look like.
It's a very, I guess there would be sort of specialized thing where you have generally your plan, but then you change it a little based on the community and what it needs.
Right, exactly. And actually there was a previous TDI district, and Lynn was one of the first communities to pilot this 6 or 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. And even since then, the program has evolved because Mass Development is really committed to tinkering with the program and making sure that the TDI program is as effective as possible. So even my work now is defined somewhat differently than the work of my predecessor, who was in an adjacent neighborhood, 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, and you switched careers a little bit to hop into being a fellow.
Yeah, that is true. So for the last 9 or 10 years, I was a real estate litigator working on litigation. I worked for law firms working on litigation that came out mostly of real estate and development. Prior to my life in law school, I had worked in microfinance and refugee resettlement, so had more experience kind of working directly with the community. But I really felt compelled to find a way to harness the skills I had gained as an attorney and bring those back in to more of a public service and community-oriented career. And I think with this position at Mass Development, I'm hoping to marry that experience and my real interests in working in public interest work.
Yeah, you definitely seem to have done that, and your work in real estate, it would be useful because from what I can tell, so much of the work is also business-based, like working with these other businesses, and again, that's not my field at all, so I would not be very useful in that department.
Yeah, and I think, too, as I emphasized earlier, the work is through the partnership. So the other issue is I am not bringing all the necessary skills to the table myself. But, for example, when you mentioned the working with businesses on the partnership, we have individuals who have specialized in supporting small businesses and have worked for community development corporations and have founded, the founder of the Latino Support Network and different individuals like this. And the idea is that we can all pool our resources. So I'm bringing my legal and real estate background, then we have a bunch of different individuals at the table bringing their background, and the idea is to figure out how we can best pool our resources.
So it's very much a team effort.
That's the idea, yeah, that is the idea. And ideally, we are able to create a partnership that keeps working and spin off other collaborations. You know, a great outcome of the partnership would be just two individuals who wouldn't have otherwise known each other collaborating together on a separate project.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the idea, is making those internal connections within the community.
Yeah, and it all sounds like such a great program, and I said we've been glad to host you at LCTV as well, you in our conference room, so.
Yeah, that's an important part of it, and I think that, so for the viewers, my office is actually based here in LCTV, and they have, you guys have been generous enough to give me a little bit of space to put my computer and hold meetings, but I think that also exemplifies kind of the attitude of the program, which is, you know, we need help from the community like LCTV in order to make this effective. And Mass Development doesn't want someone who's located in Boston or somewhere else, you know, having the role of trying to coordinate efforts in Lynn. They want someone who's on Union Street in Lynn. So I'm here, yeah, you can vouch for me, I'm here pretty much every day.
Yep.
And I think my residency here at LCTV is kind of something that demonstrates the values of the program.
Oh yeah, definitely. You're here, you're on the ground, you're in it, you're out all the time, really working with all these organizations, businesses, people, partners, all of them.
That's the idea, yeah. You know, I'm still new, and I've been very, very lucky to have a lot of people welcoming me into the community. And so hopefully I'll bring that to fruition. But yes, the idea is definitely, you know, I'm just kind of serving to grease the wheels and make connections among all of the great and really effective people that are already here in Lynn.
Yes, definitely. And I want to thank you again, too, for coming on and talking about it, and really letting people know about Mass Development, about the fellows.
Yeah, it's really my pleasure. And as you can see, the nature of the work, because of Mass Development's commitment to really making it a ground-up thing, is that it's a little bit nebulous and hard to define. And I really find these conversations helpful for me. So I appreciate you having me on to talk about it and kind of sharpen some of my ideas, hopefully.
Well, of course, I'm glad to be able to help as well. And once again, I'm Danny Vittori. This is the Lynn Lowdown, and we will see you next week with more guests.